Good evening, students. You are in Praxuromani first year. As far as English is concerned, you are having prose, poetry, and grammar. Let us begin our today's class with the prose lesson. The Portrait of a Lady, written by Khushwant Singh. Let us know about the author first of all. Khushwant Singh was an Indian novelist and lawyer. He studied at St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and King's College, London. Let us know some of his brilliant works. The Mark of Vishnu, A History of Sikhs, and The Train to Pakistan. These are the famous works of the author Khushwant Singh. There is a brief description about the prose. Here is a story that brings out the bond between the author and his loving grandmother. So it is nothing but there is a close connection, close link between the author and his grandmother. So this prose details about this thing. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of a person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. The first paragraph of the prose. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. So the first line of the prose tells us about the grandmother of the author. How is his grandmother? She is an old woman. What do you mean by grandmother? The term explains that grandmother must be an old woman. Am I right? She had been old and wrinkled for 20 years that I had known her. She remains the same. She remains old for the past 20 years. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. It is very difficult for the author to believe that once she was very young and she had a husband and she had a youthful life. Because according to him, she is an old woman. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. What do you know about the term mantelpiece? Do you know the meaning of the word? It is a shelf projecting from the wall above a fireplace. So there is a picture of a grandmother. There is a picture of the grandmother of the author. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. Now the author, he gives a description about his grandfather. How is he? He knows his grandfather only after seeing that picture of his grandfather. How is he? He looks like 100 years old man in that picture. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He cannot imagine a person like him to have a wife and children because he's very old. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. So after seeing his picture, he develops an idea that he must be having lots and lots of grandchildren, not children and wife. As for my grandmother, being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. Now the author tells us about, in the first paragraph, tells us about the grandmother of the author. Then he gives a description about his grandfather. And again, now he speaks about his grandmother. She often told us of the game she used to play as a child, because he's having an interaction with his grandmother. Based on that, he tells us a detailed explanation about that. What is that? She often told us of the game she used to play as a child. She explains certain stories. She details about certain stories when she was a child. She tells everything to that boy. That is our author. Who is that author? Khushwant Singh. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. No, he cannot imagine, the author cannot imagine that once she was young What he cannot imagine? He cannot imagine his grandmother to be a young girl and that she played when she was young. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. This brief description about the grandmother. How did she look? She was short, fat, and slightly bent because of her age. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. So, what do you mean by that? There are a lot of wrinkles in her face because of age. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her. Also terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. As he told us already, he repeats a point. What is that point? According to him, she remains the same for the past 20 years. She remains old. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. So what is she doing in that house? What kind of lady is she? She's very kind. She is a good-hearted lady. She hobbled about the house in spotless white. What do you mean by that? She walks unsteadily. She walks here and there. Okay. About the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop. So what is she doing? After wearing white sari, she wants to balance while walking. That is why she keeps her hand on her waist. And what is that? The other telling the beads of her rosary. What do you mean by that? She tells the names of the God by counting the beads of the rosary. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved an inaudible prayer. What do you mean by that? Her white hairs, she's having white hair because of old age. It is not, her hairs are not combed, they are scattered. Okay. Puckered face and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. What do you mean by that? Her wrinkled face. Puckered face. What do you mean by that word puckered? Wrinkled. Wrinkled face and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayers. She tells the names of the God. She tells some prayer to God always. But that is not audible. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. What do you mean by that? She looks beautiful. It is a kind of, what is it? She walks there around the house in wearing a white sari. It is somewhat similar to the, what is that? Winter landscape in the mountains, and it is spreading white serenity. Okay, peace, and she remains a symbol of peace and contentment. Okay, my grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. No, he had a close association with his grandmother. We know that already. Because he had to spend a lot of time with his grandmother only, because his parents, they were settled in city. And he was there. He's there in the village with his grandmother. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She's doing all kinds of work. She's helping him a lot to get ready to school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song while she bathed and dressed me in hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice, but never bothered to learn it. So she's telling that morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song. What do you mean by that monotonous? It is a kind of unchanging or boring tune, same tune. She bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. What do you mean by that? She is telling the prayer every day, and she wants that boy to learn the prayer, and she wants the boy to learn all such things. Okay. I listened because I loved her voice, but never bothered to learn it. What do you mean by that? So here the boy listens what she's telling because he likes the voice of that grandmother, but he's not ready to learn the prayer. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. So she packs all the things which are important for the school. What are they? Slate, wooden slate, what is it? Chalk, ink pot, all such things. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati, okay, with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. So they have the breakfast after doing prayer and all. They are having that breakfast. What kind of breakfast they are having? They are eating stale chapati by spreading butter and sugar on it. Okay, she carried several stale chapatis with a for the village dog. She goes along with that boy to school, and she carries some stale chapatis for the village stray dogs. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. What do you mean by that? The grandmother is not dropping the boy in that school, but she's there with the boy in the school because the school is attached to the temple. She reminds the temple while the boy is studying in the school. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer, while the children sat in rows on either side of veranda, singing the alphabet or the prayer in the chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading scriptures. So these boys, children are studying in school. They are learning what is that alphabet or morning prayer. But grandmother, she is busy reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. After finishing his class, they come back to the house. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapati we threw to them. What do you mean by that? So again, they are having the remaining chapatis with them. Now they offer these chapatis to the dogs who are waiting outside the door of the school or temple. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. So now they are settled. Parents of the author, they are well settled in city. Now they call these two people to come and stay with them. Who are they? Two people. What do you mean by what are the two people? One is grandmother and another one is the boy, author. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. What do you mean by that? They are, after going to city, they have a friendship. Okay, but they cannot, they cannot chat for a long time because here after coming to city, the grandmother is not accompanying with the boy to the school because he is traveling to the school in a bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of her city house. In village, she gave chapatis to street dogs. Here, after coming to city, she is feeding sparrows. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. So just years go on, and the common meeting point, they meet each other very less. They don't meet each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. Sometimes whenever she is free, she tries to help him to go to school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. So after he comes from school, she is asking some regular questions. What classes you had today? What are the lessons you have been taught today? So these are the formal questions she is asking him after he comes back from school. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning. So what he is telling him, what is the answer given by the author? He is getting an English education there. What is that? He is studying Western science, and he tells her about the law of gravity and other principles. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She is not satisfied with the lessons that has been taught in that city. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school, and she was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scripture. She feels unhappy mainly because he's not getting education about God or scripture in the city. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She had nothing but a silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. No, one day he explains her about his music classes, but she seems dissatisfied. The thing is, what is the reason? He has learned Western music. Okay. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. So now he's going to, after completing his school, he goes to university. I was given a room of my own. He is given a separate room as he has become a young boy, young man. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. What do you mean by that? Now the common link of friendship, their link, their connection, their association, their affection has been cut, snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She accepts what she is getting. No, she accepts that her isolation, her separation with the boy. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Now there is nobody to speak to her. No, she's not speaking to the boy. She has reduced a lot. And what she is doing then? By sitting at home, she spins, spins the wheel, and she recites prayers. Only in the afternoon, she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda, breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirruping. So, what she's doing in the afternoon then? She finds some time to feed the sparrows. She feeds the sparrows. What kind of food she is giving them? Breadcrumbs. Good. Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. What do you mean by that? While she is feeding the sparrows, hundreds of birds come there and they make the place. No, it is the place is completely made of noisy confusion. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. What do you mean by that? So she moves with them very closely. And the birds, the birds also they understand her love and affection for them, for the birds. Okay. They move very freely with that lady. Some came and perched on her legs. What do you mean by that? They are sitting and taking rest on her legs, and some of the birds taking rest on the shoulders of the lady. Some birds are sitting on her head. But she is not sending them up. She is not shooing them away. Okay. And in the entire day, that half an hour is the good time for her, peaceful time and happiest time for her. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, but at her age, one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of a rosary. Silently, she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. So now he moves to some other foreign country to continue his higher education. So he thinks that the grandmother, she'll be upset after hearing that news, but she's not showing that kind of emotion when she knows about that news. She's there to bid him farewell. Why she is there to bid him farewell? Because he is going to the foreign country. What she is doing there? What is she doing there?
Higher education.
No, that lady after going to that. She is uttering her regular prayer. She is telling her regular prayer, and her mind is completely lost in the prayer. She is completely involved in telling prayer. Okay. Her fingers are busy telling the beads of, she is counting, telling the names of God, and she is counting the beads. And she kisses, no, while he is about to leave from that place, she kisses him. So that is the author feels very happy. That is the physical the contact he has, no, while he is moving from that place, he feels happy for the kiss. Okay, but that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words. And while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. Now he completes his education, and what is that? Arthur comes home. He comes home after 5 years. Now that lady is also there to receive that Arthur. The old lady, she is also, grandmother is also there to receive the Arthur. She remains the same, and what kind of feeling she has towards that Arthur? She grasps that Arthur tightly in her arms. Okay, she hugs him. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with the sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. Now, no, there is a lot of, what do you want? In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. So there is a change in her behavior. After the arrival of the Arthur, he finds some change in the behavior of the old lady. What is that? She's not praying. She collects her neighbors, the women from her neighborhood, and she starts singing songs. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of homecoming of forest. What kinds of songs she's singing there, along with the other ladies of the neighborhood? So they sing about the songs of warriors who come home, okay, who return home after war or battle. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. These people, the people, I mean, the father, mother, and Arthur, these people, they try to stop her. Okay. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. So that is the only day that the author finds that the grandmother has not prayed in her life. The next morning, she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. So next day, the very next day, she becomes ill. What kind of illness she has? She is affected with mild fever, and the doctor advises them not to worry about the fever because it seems very simple. My grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. She was not going to waste any more time talking to us. What do you mean by that? So, but even though the doctor has been advised not to worry about the sickness of the lady, she feels that she is nearing her death. Okay, she is nearing death, and she feels that she has to pray. She is not ready to waste even a single minute by talking to the others. She's not ready to waste her time, and she wants to concentrate more on prayer. We protested, but she sighed, but she ignored our protest. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads even before we could suspect her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. They try to stop her. She is sick, so the family members, they try to stop her, but she continues to pray her usual prayer and she counts the beads too. And after that, till her death, she tells the prayer. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. No, there is a sort of unhealthy or pale appearance. They see that sort of appearance in her face, and it shows that she is dead. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. So she is taken from the bed, her dead body is taken from the bed, and they are laying her on the ground because it is the custom. So they are doing that. Their regular thing. That is why they are doing that. And they are covering the dead body with a red cloth. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So they lament for a while. After the death of anyone, we used to mourn. We used to lament. We feel sorry for the death of a person. That is the thing. In the evening, and after that, they start doing some arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. They are making arrangements. They are about to take the dead body to the cremation ground. So what do they find that time? Thousands of sparrows. They come to their house. Okay, there was no chirruping. They don't make any noise. They don't disturb others. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. So they feel that they are there to have something, have some food, but that is why the author's mother, she gives them bread. She broke it into little crumbs, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it to them. So she is also making, giving them bread crumbs. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's scarves off, they flew away quietly. So, but even though she's giving them, she tries to feed them with the bread crumbs, they are not taking them. The birds are not taking them. After they carry the dead body of the lady grandmother from the house, they fly away from the place quietly. Next morning, the sweepers swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. What do you mean by that? They have not taken any piece of bread from that house, but they have visited the house only for the reason that they just somehow they know that it is the last day of the grandma. That is why they are there, and they don't disturb anyone. They don't chirrup. They don't make any noise. Even though they are provided with the breadcrumbs, they don't eat. Just they also lament for the death of the grandma. So this is the prose. Actually, உங்களுக்கு இந்த ப்ரோஸ்ல என்ன புரிஞ்சதுன்னு பார்த்தா என்ன எதை பத்தி இருக்கு ப்ரோஸ் லெசன்? What is the title of the lesson? The portrait of a lady. What do you mean by the word portrait? Picture. Clear. The author tries to give a clear picture about the grandmother, and not only about the grandmother, about their link or association, how he is connected to his grandmother. So இப்போ இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேஜ்ல இருந்து எப்படி அவருக்கு கிராண்ட்மதர் மேல ரொம்ப பிரியமா இருந்தது, எப்படி இருந்தாங்க ரெண்டு பேரும் அப்படின்னா, எதனால இருந்தாங்க? சிட்டில இருக்காங்க, அதனால ரெண்டு பேரும் வில்லேஜ்ல இருக்காங்க. வில்லேஜ்ல இருக்கப்போ நிறைய நேரம் ரெண்டு பேரும் ஒன்னா ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ற மாதிரி இருக்கு. ஸ்கூலுக்கு போறது, அவருக்கு அரேஞ்ச் பண்ண, சின்ன வயசுல எல்லாம் அரேஞ்ச் பண்ணுவோம் இல்லையா? சோ அந்த மாதிரி எல்லா ஹெல்ப்புமே யார் பண்றா? கிராண்ட்மதர் பண்றாங்க. சோ அதனால அவங்க கூட ஈஸியா மூவ் ஆறாரு. சோ அகைன் ரெண்டு பேரும் ஒரே டைம்ல ஸ்கூலுக்கு போறாங்க. ஒரே டைம் ஆத்தர் வந்து ஸ்கூல்ல இருக்கிறச்சு கிராண்ட்மதர் என்ன பண்றாங்க? டெம்பிள், ஏன்னா அட்டாச் ஸ்கூல் இஸ் அட்டாச் டு தி டெம்பிள் இல்லையா? சோ டெம்பிள்ல அவங்க உட்கார்ந்து சம் ஸ்கிரிப்சர்ஸ் ரீட் பண்றாங்க while he is attending school. இங்க அவர் ஆல்பபெட்ஸ் அண்ட் பிரேயர் எல்லாம் கத்துக்கிறச்சு அவங்க அதை பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. சோ அப்ப என்ன பண்றாங்க இவங்க? மார்னிங் பிரேக்ஃபாஸ்ட் என்னவா இருக்கு? சப்பாத்தி. சோ சப்பாத்தில வந்து பிரெட் அண்ட் பட்டர் அண்ட் சுகர் ஆட் பண்ணி சாப்பிடுறாங்க. தென் வில்லேஜ் டாக்ஸ்க்கு அவங்க they carry bread, chapatis for them. அதுக்கப்புறம் ஸ்கூலுக்கு போயாச்சு. ஸ்கூல்ல இருந்து ரிட்டர்ன் வரச்சியும் they provide chapatis to the stray dogs. And what is that? Next என்ன பார்த்தோம்? அதுக்கப்புறம் என்ன? they are completely settled, well settled in the cityன்றப்போ அதுக்கப்புறம் கூப்பிடுறாங்க ரெண்டு பேரையும். யார் ரெண்டு பேரையும் கூப்பிடுறாங்க? கிராண்ட்மதரையும் பாயும் கூப்பிடுறாங்க, சிட்டிக்கு வர சொல்லி கூப்பிடுறாங்க. சோ சிட்டிக்கு வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் கூட அவ 2 பேரும் பேசிட்டே தான் இருக்காங்க. ஒருத்தருக்கு ஒருத்தர் ஒரு அசோசியேஷன் இருக்கு. ஆனா வில்லேஜ்ல இருந்த அளவுக்கு இந்த சிட்டில அவ்வளவு மூவ் பண்ண முடியல. இப்போ ஏன்னா வில்லேஜ்ல வந்து கிராண்ட் மதர் தான் அந்த குழந்தை பையனை கூட்டிட்டு போறா ஸ்கூலுக்கு, அவங்க கூடயே இருக்கா, ஐ மீன் பக்கத்துல இருக்கா, சேர்ந்து வராங்க. இப்ப இங்க அவன் வந்து காலேஜ்க்கு ஸ்கூலுக்கு வந்து ஸ்கூல் பஸ்ல போயிட்டு இருக்கான். சோ அப்ப வீட்டுல இருக்கிற டைம் மட்டும் தான் 2 பேரும் ஒன்னா பேசிக்கிற மாதிரி இருக்கு. ஸ்கூலுக்கு போனா அவன் வேற. அகைன் வந்து அந்த கிராண்ட் மதருக்கு அந்த படிக்கிற எஜுகேஷன் மேல அவ்வளவு இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் அவங்க கொடுக்கறது இல்ல. ரீசன் என்னன்னா அவன் வந்து வெஸ்டர்ன் எஜுகேஷன் படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கான், சயின்ஸ் எல்லாம் படிக்கிறான். ஏன்னா அது படிக்கிறதுனால வருத்தம் இல்ல, காட பத்தின எந்த விஷயமும் அவனோட சப்ஜெக்ட்ல இல்ல அப்படிங்கிறது வருத்தம். அவன் படிக்கிற மியூசிக் லெசன்ஸ்ல கூட அவங்க ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் காட்டுறது இல்ல. வேற என்ன பார்த்தோம், அவர் யூனிவர்சிட்டிக்கு போனதுக்கு அப்புறம் வாட் ஹேப்பன்ஸ் இன் தர் லைஃப், யூனிவர்சிட்டிக்கு போறாரு. அதுக்கப்புறம் யூனிவர்சிட்டி எஜுகேஷன் போறதுக்கு அப்புறம் இஸ் கிவன் a செப்பரேட் ரூம், தனியா ஒரு ரூம்ல எடுத்து தங்குறாரு. இது வரைக்கும் ஒரே ரூம்லயாவது இருந்தாங்க, கொஞ்சம் டைமாவது பேச முடிஞ்சது. இப்போ ரொம்ப அதிகமா பேசவே முடியல 2 பேரும். சோ தனியா ரூம் கிடைச்சது, கம்ப்ளீட்டா அவங்களோட அசோசியேஷன் கட் ஆயிடுறது. அப்ப அவங்களோட டைம் அவங்க எப்படி ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்றாங்க, ஸ்பின்னிங் வீல்ஸ், தென் ஃபீடிங் ஸ்பாரோஸ். இங்க வில்லேஜ்ல இருக்கிற வச்சு டாக்ஸ் குடுக்குறாங்க இல்ல, இங்க வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் டாக்ஸ் அந்த மாதிரி அவங்களுக்கு வெளியில அவங்க போறது இல்ல. அதனால ஆமா ஸ்பாரோஸ்க்கு பிரெட் குடுக்குறாங்க, பிரெட் கிரம்ஸ். சோ அவங்க பேர்ட்ஸ் கூட எப்படி மூவ் பண்றாங்க, எவ்வளவு அசோசியேஷன் எப்படி இருக்கு அவங்களுக்கு, அசோசியேஷன் பேர்ட் கூட பார்த்தேன் ரொம்ப அவங்க கிட்ட ரொம்ப ஃப்ரீயா மூவ் பண்றது இல்லையா, ரொம்ப கால்ல உட்காருது, தலையில உட்காருது, ஷோல்டர்ல உட்காருது, ரொம்ப ஃப்ரீயா மூவ் பண்றது. அவங்க விரட்டுறதே இல்லை, விரட்டாம அவங்க ரொம்ப அந்த ஹாஃப் அன் ஹவர் தான் அவங்களோட அந்த என்டையர் டேல ரொம்ப ஹாப்பியஸ்ட் ஹவர்னு பார்த்தேன்னா அந்த ஹாஃப் அன் ஹவர் தான். அதுக்கப்புறம் இவங்க அப்ராட்ல போய் ஹையர் எஜுகேஷன் கண்டினியூ பண்றப்ப அவன் நினைக்கிறான், ஐயோ நம்ம கிராண்ட் மதர் ரொம்ப ஃபீல் பண்ணுவாங்க, நம்ம அப்செட் ஆயிடுவா, வருத்தப்படுவாளோன்னு நினைச்சுன்னு வரான். பட் அந்த மாதிரி எமோஷன் எதுவும் கொடுக்கல. அங்க 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 வராங்க, டிராப் பண்றதுக்கு வராங்க. ஸ்டேஷன்ல வந்தா கூட அவங்க என்ன ஒரு மாதிரி ஏர்போர்ட் போனா கூட ஒரு ஒரு எமோஷனை வந்து அவங்க கொடுக்கல. ஏன்னா அப்ப கூட அவங்க ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே தான் இருக்காங்க. சோ அகைன் லாஸ்ட் அவங்க கிஸ் பண்றாங்க அந்த போறதுக்கு முன்னாடி. அவன் வந்து ரொம்ப ஹி செரிஷஸ் நோ, ஹி ஃபீல்ஸ் ஹாப்பி. அதுக்கப்புறம் என்ன ஆகுது, 5 இயர்ஸ்க்கு அப்புறம் கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணிட்டு, எஜுகேஷன் கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணிட்டு திருப்பி வீட்டுக்கு வரச்சு மறுபடியும் எப்படி முதல்ல பார்த்தாங்களோ கிராண்ட் மதர், அதே லெவல்ல ஒரு நாள் கூட வயசான மாதிரி தெரியல, அதே மாதிரி ஓல்டு தான், அதே ஓல்டா அதே லெவல் மெயின்டைன் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ஓகே, அவனை வந்த உடனே அவன் வேகமா அவனை வந்து கட்டி பிடிச்சு அந்த டைம்ல கூட என்ன பண்றாரு, பிரேயர் சொல்றதுதான் அவன் கேட்கிறாரு. நெக்ஸ்ட் டேல இருந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா அவரோட இது வந்து அவங்களோட ஆட்டிடியூட் நிறைய பிஹேவியர் வந்து நிறைய சேஞ்ச் ஆகுது அவர் நோட்டீஸ் பண்றாரு. என்ன எப்பயும் அவங்க ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே இருப்பாங்க இல்லையா, ப்ரே பண்ணல. நெக்ஸ்ட் டே அவங்க வந்து என்ன ஆகுது, பக்கத்துல இருக்கிற லேடிஸ் எல்லாம், நெய்பர்ஹுட் லேடிஸ் எல்லாம் கூப்பிட்டு சாங்ஸ் எல்லாம் பாடிட்டு ட்ரம்ஸ் வச்சுட்டு சோ அதெல்லாம் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. அவங்க ட்ரை பண்றாங்க, பட் ரொம்ப அன்யூஷுவல் பிஹேவியரா இருக்கு. அதுல அவங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப சிக் ஆயிடுறாங்க. அந்த டே ஃபுல்லா அவங்க ப்ரே பண்ணவே இல்லை, சிக் ஆயிடுறாங்க. சிக் ஆனதுக்கு அப்புறம் டாக்டர் வந்து செக் பண்ணிட்டு என்ன சொல்றாங்க, நார்மல் ஃபீவர் தான், நாட் வரி டோன்ட் வரி அப்படின்ற மாதிரி சொல்றாரு. ஆனா கூட இந்த பாட்டிக்கு தெரியறது சாக போறோம்ன்றத அவங்க ஃபீல் பண்றாங்க. ஃபீல் பண்ணிட்ட உடனே இனிமே நான் என்னோட க்ஷணம் கூட வேஸ்ட் பண்ண மாட்டேன், ஒவ்வொரு க்ஷணமும் நான் ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே தான் இருப்பேன், யாரு கூடயும் பேச போறதுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே இருக்காங்க. ப்ரே வந்து ஸ்டாப் பண்ண பாக்குறேன், ஏன்னா ஆல்ரெடி சிக்கா இருக்கா, தூங்காம ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே இருந்தா ஏதாவது ஆயிடுமோன்னு பயப்படுறாங்க. பட் அவங்க கேட்கல. அகைன் ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே இருக்கிறச்ச என்ன ஆகுது, ப்ரே பண்ணிட்டே அவங்க இறந்து போயிடுறாங்க. இப்ப அவங்க ஃபேஸ்ல ஒரு ஒரு கைண்ட் ஆஃப் ஒரு அன்ஹெல்தி, ஒரு வெளிரி போன மாதிரி ஒரு அப்பியரன்ஸ் ஃபேஸ்ல தெரியாது. அதை பார்த்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் தான் அவன் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பண்ணிக்கிறான், இல்ல அப்படின்ற மாதிரி. கடைசி அவ சாகுற நேரத்துல கையில அந்த ரோசரி இல்ல, what is the description, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her லைஃப்லெஸ் ஃபிங்கர்ஸ்னு சொல்றோம். ஓகே, அதுக்கப்புறம் அவங்களோட கஷ்டம் படி அவங்க பெட்ல இருந்து எடுத்து அவங்க பாடியை கீழே வைக்கிறாங்க. அப்ப கவர் பண்றாங்க ரெட் ஷரவுட் வச்சு. சோ அந்த டைம்ல அவங்க கிரிமேஷன் கொண்டு போற டைம்ல பாத்தீங்கன்னா நிறைய ஸ்பாரோஸ் அங்க வருது. இப்போ இவங்க என்ன நினைக்கிறாங்க, ஸ்பாரோஸ்க்கு டெய்லி அந்த பாட்டி ஃபீட் பண்ணிருக்காங்க இல்லையா, சோ அதனால பிரெட் கொடுப்போம்னு சொல்லி இந்த ஆத்தரோட மதர் அவங்க வந்து ஃபுட் கொடுக்கறது, பிரெட் கொடுக்குறாங்க. அதே மாதிரி பாட்டி என்ன பண்ணுவாளோ உடைச்சு நொறுக்கி கொடுக்குறாங்க. பட் அந்த எடுத்துக்கிறதே இல்ல, பேர்ட்ஸ் வந்து எடுக்கிறதே இல்ல. என்ன பண்றது, பேர்ட்ஸ் அமைதியாவே இருக்கு, சைலண்டா, டிஸ்டர்ப் பண்ணாம. எப்பயும் யூஸ்வல் சிர்ரப்பிங் எதுவும் பண்ணும், அங்க எந்த சவுண்டும் கொடுக்கல, எந்த நாய்ஸும் இல்ல, சைலண்டா இருக்கு. பாடி எடுத்து டெட் பாடி எடுத்து போனதுக்கு அப்புறம் அதுக்கு உடனே கிளம்பி போயிடும். This is the end of this lesson. So now let us see some discussion questions from this lesson. Describe the grandfather as seen in the portrait, and why was Arthur lived with his grandmother in the village? Where did the author study in his childhood? So these questions are discussion questions from this lesson. My dear students, I hope you all have understood this lesson towards the portrait of a lady clearly. Then let us all meet in our next interesting session. Thank you.